Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Gray. I'm the Montgomery County organizer for Washington Area Bicyclists Association. I want to welcome you to our keynote session. We are really pleased to have the Secretary of Transportation from Maryland, Paul Wiedefeld. From his roles in leading Metro, BWI, MTA, and MDOT's planning department, Transportation Secretary Paul Wiedefeld has more than 40 years of transportation experience, both in the public and private sector. Now, as secretary, he's elevating the Maryland Department of Transportation's top-class multimodal transportation system. Please welcome MDOT Secretary Paul Wiedefeld.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I really do appreciate it for you giving me the time. I apologize I can't be there in person. The governor's asked me to come down and join him for a meeting, so I do have a pretty hard stop, but I'm glad to be here nonetheless. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with you. I know I've seen some obviously names I know and people that I've worked with over the years, so it's good to see a number of you. Particularly County Councilmember Natali. We were just together not too long ago on Georgia Avenue, doing a walk with the governor to really go through some of the basic issues we're going to be talking about today, and that I wanted to present to you some of our thoughts on today as well. You know, we really have to think of everything we do from a safety context, and you only need to take a walk in that community and many others, unfortunately, in the state to see where we need to do a much better job. So thank you again for all the efforts that we had on Georgia Avenue to do that, and to really start to get down to some you know, what are we actually going to do that. So before I get into a little bit more detail, I just did want to just share a little bit about myself. I am a biker, both leisurely, not as much for coming to work, I will admit, but quite a bit leisurely. I live up in Baltimore County in Towson. There's some nice routes there. The North Central Trail, as you may be familiar with. And I am very fortunate to have a very small place down in the lower eastern shore of Maryland, and do quite a bit of cycling there, and debating whether to do the Seagull 100 this year, out of Salisbury. If you're familiar with that tour, it's a great little tour in Lower Eastern Shore. But at the end of the day, cycling is many of the modes of transportation that I use, that we all use. Whether you see us, you know, whether I walk, obviously, take transit, driving across Maryland, using our network. But it's important to think about it that way, because that's what we should be creating, a network that's connected, convenient, safe, and accessible for all users. That's what Governor Moore wants from transportation, very clearly. As you know, since taking office a few months ago, Governor Moore has been sprinting to his goals and to accomplish a number of areas in terms of safety, equity, economic opportunity, engagement, and the environment. Just as an aside, I've worked for many governors over the last 40 years, and I can tell you, Governor Moore is the same person you see in person at public events as he is on one-on-one meetings. Basically, he's very focused, he's very passionate about what he does, and he's a business savvy leader. So it's really quite a great opportunity to work with someone of that caliber. And he set the bar very high for transportation. And obviously, we're right there with him to achieve that. And that's, to be frank, that's one of the reasons that I was so glad to have the opportunity to come and work for him and his administration. So his number one priority is safety, for sure, across the entire network. So that doesn't mean whether you're walking, biking, flying, or obviously using a vehicle of some sort. They're also the Moore-Miller administration is also laser focused on priorities of equity, again, economic opportunity and engagement, and the environment. So we will continue to do everything we can to support the governor in that. He's also taken a all hands on deck approach, and the way to think about that is he's basically challenging and demanding, in effect, that all of his cabinet members work together to meet these goals, and not to just work in our own lane, but to think about, everything we do from that perspective. So I'm working like with the Departments of Corrections and the Department of Juvenile Services to think through transportation needs, employment opportunities, training opportunities. That's the way he wants us to think about state government to meet those goals. And he feels that's the only way we can get to some of these larger goals. And clearly, both the governor and lieutenant governor, they know mobility and connections basically, are key to reaching a number of those goals. And as you've heard many times, he's going to leave no one behind. So let me talk now to a little bit about the plan for Vision Zero. All of this informs our goals to make our roads safer for everyone. Like other states, Maryland has seen far too many deaths and injuries on our roads. Tragically, 563 people died in Maryland roadways last year, including 135 pedestrians and 11 bicyclists. And already this year, we've had at least 235 fatalities on the Maryland roads, including 57 pedestrians and 5 bicyclists. So it's a terrible, terrible reminder of that we've got to do more. To enhance everyone's understanding of the severity of the issue, the Maryland Highway Safety Office recently unveiled a new crash fatality dashboard. This was done at a conference that was held about 6 weeks ago, I believe. The dashboard includes state crash data revealing everything from hotspots where fatal crashes occur to causes of these crashes and much more. What the dashboard shows is that we have far too many fatalities and injuries from our transportation system. And when we see this data, we have to remind ourselves that these aren't just numbers, right? These are our neighbors, these are our friends, these are our family, these are our co-workers that we've lost. So it is again a tragic facts that we have to address. So Maryland's goal to have 0 deaths by 2030. We know highway fatalities, they can be eliminated. That's why we don't use the term accidents. They're crashes, and every crash is preventable. Every life obviously counts, so we have to do everything we can to prevent a crash. Previously, MDOT's, like most of DOTs, primarily focused on one mode of transportation, roads. And then one type of traveler, the private vehicle, is really where a lot of decisions were made, both in terms of design, planning, design, operating, and funding. And so that's been fine from some states, but it's no longer the goal of this state. The focus on roads has left some communities behind and has divided others, as I'm sure you're aware, many examples throughout the state and throughout the country of that. So we need to balance our network and provide a safe access for our vulnerable users who walk, bike, scoot, or have mobility challenges. We need to think of all of that. The good news is we know what to do. That is why today I'm here to announce steps that I'm confident will help MDOT achieve its Vision Zero goal. First, I'm proud to announce this week MDOT signed up as an ally with the U.S. Department of Transportation National Roadway Safety Strategy, a national initiative dedicated to ending deaths on our roads. And thanks to President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, we have unprecedented access to funding dedicated to bicycling and pedestrian infrastructure. This funding is in programs like the Transportation Alternatives and Safe Streets for All. The law includes the most highway funding ever in the transportation law, most of which can be invested in states for bikes and walking needs. We'll use these federal funding to prioritize and implement complete streets, greatly enhancing our Vision Zero goals. Second, I have charged my team to take a fresh look at our regulations, policies, and capital transportation program to ensure we are removing barriers and making investments in a safer multimodal transportation system. Our team will assess limitations and opportunities and help us make accessibility and safety a reality for all users. Third, I've also directed my team to update and upgrade MDOT's 11-year-old Complete Streets policy. My message is clear. I'm changing how MDOT will do business with the goal of rapidly reducing road fatalities and serious injuries to zero. This means redesigning roads, redrafting policies, and partnering with law enforcement. My team will reimagine Maryland's roadway network to prioritize the most vulnerable users. We'll work to apply complete street principles throughout the system in every phase, from planning and design to construction and use. Right now, our team is taking an in-depth look at the kind of investments we'll need to achieve zero roadway deaths. Together, I do believe we can achieve Vision Zero. So talking a little bit about some of the tools in the toolbox. We already have a strong foundation with a recently released pedestrian safety action plan from the State Highway Administration. The plan looked at pedestrian fatalities across the state and identified 23 corridors as being high priorities, where changes could be made to meaningful impact those corridors. 11 of these corridors are Montgomery, Prince George's counties. I've directed my team to identify and transfer 5 of these priority corridors, working with communities to propose and implement innovative safety measures. Think of it as an extreme street makeover. We will turn these corridors into model complete streets. We also will implement complete streets principles onto new roadways using the State Highways Administration's context-driven guide, which gives us an innovative menu of options so we can choose safety and access measures that best fit each community. Other tools in the toolbox are community-driven, like MDOT's Kim LaFair's Bikeway Network Program, which provides annual grants for bike path and projects through the state, and safety grants available through the Motor Vehicle Administration's Highway Safety Office. These programs, as well as federal grant programs aimed at bike and pedestrian access and safety, are available to local governments and other organizations. MDOT is ready, willing, and very able to help groups apply for these programs and navigate the process. So please reach out if you need any assistance, anything that you may be interested in. Another tool in our toolbox is our great partnerships with law enforcement and the counties of the local highway safety plans. Some solutions come from policies and infrastructure, others come from behavior. For instance, distracted driving contributes to more than 26,000 injuries and 180 fatalities in Maryland roads each year. Our Highway Safety Office works every day with law enforcement on statewide campaigns. You've probably seen some of the billboards urging everyone to be the driver who saves the lives by behaving correctly behind the wheel. Expanding transit. I also want to touch on another Governor Moore's top priority, expanding transit across the state of Maryland. Already, we've taken several steps to accomplish this. In April, the governor announced MDOT's partnership with Virginia to explore expansion of the MARC train service in Alexandria, to Alexandria. I recently met with the VDOT secretary to discuss that very issue as well. This will transform MARC from a commuter rail service into a regional rail service provider, expanding economic opportunities, providing direct one-seat ride between people's homes and their jobs in Maryland and Northern Virginia. The General Assembly allocated $100 million to help MDOT study expanded transit in Maryland, including studying the Southern Maryland Rapid Transit between Prince George and Charles County, as well as a better east-west service in Baltimore. We've also focused on enhancing the last mile connections, providing the best possible door-to-door transit experience. That's why we're in the process of transforming some of MARC's trains cars into bike cars with 25 bike racks, so that people can ride their bikes to MARC, hop on, then finish the last mile to work on their bike to work, both safely and conveniently. Once complete, the transformation will allow MARC to have bike cars in service to meet, encourage, and grow demand. We also need to work more closely with our other transit partners in the region of WMATA. Under my leadership, MDOT obviously views MDOT as a partner, but also as another mode that basically we got to make sure that we're providing the best service we can for particularly for people that want to use bike and the pedestrian access to their facilities. It's a big part of the transportation system, as you know, in the Washington region, and I think we can integrate it more to complete our service and opportunities that we have in that area of the state. Finally, on some recent hires, I did want to bring your attention to, as you probably heard me use the term team quite a bit. So that's because we have assembled a team and are assembling the team to basically focus on some of these issues. I can't do it alone. That's why we brought in some of these people. On the planning side, Joe McAnshu is my assistant secretary for planning and project development. I'm sure many of you have dealt with Joe in the past. He previously served as Governor Moore's transition team and as vice president of government affairs and infrastructure for the Greater Washington Partnership. I also recently brought in Darren Levis as the chief of environmental sustainable transportation. Darren is well known for his policy work in transportation, energy, and climate issues. These two will help MDOT move at the speed of light, we hope, to reach these Vision Zero goals. On the engagement side, former state delegate Tony Bridges is MDOT's new assistant secretary for transportation, equity, and engagement. Tony left his previous role presenting Baltimore City in the Maryland General Assembly, returned to MDOT. I've also brought back MDOT's Lynn Farrow, I'm sure many of you may have met as well, who's our director of external affairs. This is a team that's leading the way to increase MDOT's engagement between Maryland's department and agencies, local leaders, community groups, business, and elected officials. I'm confident we'll notice a big difference in how MDOT operates. We will be collaborative, inclusive, and proactively reaching out to work with communities and other stakeholders. Obviously, we won't just change. We just won't just charge ahead, with our way of thinking, but we'll listen to our partners in the common goal of promoting safety, improving mobility, and providing opportunities. So in closing, it's truly a new day for transportation in Maryland. We've been talking the talk long enough. Now it's time to walk the walk. At MDOT, we must do everything we can to make our transportation system safer for all users, and we will need everyone to help to achieve our goal. We ask everyone from bike advocates to business and local leaders to help advocate for safe streets and Vision Zero programs. Connect with your local and state leaders and tell them this is your priority too. When Governor Moore says we're leaving no one behind, he means no one, including those who walk, bike, roll within our transportation system. So thank you for the attention that you've given me. I'd be glad to take any questions. I believe I may have Joe on the line and some of the other staff that could also help answer some of the questions. Good morning, Councilmember. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Secretary Wiedefeld? Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. And I am so excited about every single thing that you just mentioned and the new partnerships that you are building with the federal government too, the announcement of the National Road Safety work that you're going to be doing with the state, with the federal government is also very important. Going back, my name is Natali Fani-González. I am the council member of District 6 in Montgomery County. I had the amazing experience of having Governor Wes Moore coming to my district only a few days ago, and Secretary Wiedefeld was there, as well as Secretary Anderson, he's the Secretary of Commerce, was there too, walking Georgia Avenue so they can experience what we are going through as a community. It's a huge difference between, driving your car on a state road versus actually walking the area and seeing how cars think that these state roads are highways that go through communities, and that's just absolutely wrong. And the highlight that I have of that event was seeing Governor Wes Moore's eyes when he was seeing the cars going by so fast. It's critical, and just the fact that he came with you shows that he's serious about making a difference in our communities, and I completely appreciate that. And we have so much work to do on that end. And with that, we're going to start with questions. I'm going to remind folks that I do have a set of questions in front of me, but also we have a Q&A in the system. And I see that we have 3 questions on the queue, but let's start with the ones that I put together first. So the first one, we're going to start with money. Let's talk about funding. Okay, so I lost my mouse. There you go. I have to. Okay, so redesigning roads to move people instead of cars requires a significant amount of investment, as you know. let's talk about the role of the federal funding and how community engagement contributes to a strong proposal. What possibilities and arguments do you see for flexing federal funding for bikeways and transit and improvements that protect vulnerable road users?
The ability to do it is the first thing, right? Is that we're allowed to do it now. So as I mentioned, what we are going to do is go back and look at our program to see where there are opportunities to do that. Again, to start to think of everything we do in that context. So looking at that as an opportunity, looking at the limited dollars we have. I mean, you hit on the, a tough issue for us is the reality, as you know, in the Washington region, they're facing a fiscal cliff at the metro side, so we have to deal with that issue. Similar in Baltimore, there's tremendous fiscal pressure. As you may know, the state legislature set up a commission to look at the funding of the trust fund, the overall funding of the trust fund. So it drives home even more the importance of making sure that we're using every federal dollar to its maximum ability to get at these larger goals that we want to get to. So that's what we'll continue to do. And we will be assessing where there are opportunities to flex those dollars to meet those needs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We'll be right there with you. As WMATA General Manager, you worked across jurisdictions and with the federal government. How can the Washington region's cities, counties, and states cooperate to boost regional progress towards Vision Zero and win critical federal support?
Yeah. I think, I mean, you hit on it. It's going to take everyone. And the other group in that, I believe, is the business community, right? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for the business community. They have fleets, for one thing, but also, they are, they can put pressure on, right? I mean, when they engage, people do pay attention more. So I think it's all of the above that we need to do. And I think we shouldn't be shy about calling out different segments to step up. We tend to gravitate sometimes to our own sort of, world, but we've got to sort of force people like, no, it's not acceptable. And I think at a personal level, we need to do more. I mean, the reality is, we have friends, we have family that do things when they're behind the wheel that is just unacceptable. Right. And I think we have to be, we have to be a little bit more aggressive and say, no, please don't, pick up that phone, or please pay attention, or please don't, eat that meal while you're driving, whatever it is, right? I think we could all do a little bit more in that area.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of like having a cultural shift. Right now, we live in a society where people are going fast everywhere for everything without thinking that our actions have consequences. And maybe when you're texting back while you're driving, it takes only a second to literally kill somebody on the road. And it's happening right now, not just in Maryland, but across the nation. And you showed the numbers in your presentation. It's shameful that's happening in our own communities. But it also is critical for us to make sure that our streets are designed in a way that we eliminate any possibility of having crashes. Every crash is preventable. And you said it too. So it's a combination between that cultural shift and that sense of responsibility that we all need to have, and also ensuring that our streets are designed in a way to move people and not cars. And I know you get it. We just need to have that regional understanding that, these things cost money. And as you also mentioned, the business community is critical. We started that safety walk in Wheaton at a restaurant, and I did that on purpose. Because when you have streets that are accessible, that's great for business. That's a win-win situation when you have people able to get to business on their bicycle, walking, feeling safe doing that, taking transit. That's a win-win. And we need to see it that way, that it cannot just be the bicycle, and I'm a cyclist too, the bicycle community, but it has to be everyone, including people of every single ability. As well. So the next question I'm going to have for you.
If I could,
yes, go ahead.
I could just mention one thing, or I'm sure you saw, that tragedy that happened in the Baltimore Beltway. There's
Yes.
6 individuals, workers, because that's the other part of this. Yes, there's obviously the community part of this that is, systemic that we have to deal with. But also we have a major problem in this country and in Maryland when you see people working to do, and wherever it is, whether it's on transit or on highways, that we just do unbelievable things. I mean, in this case, you had people doing over 100 miles an hour, and ruin these people's lives, right, and their families. So it's the community part of it, but also there's this day-to-day impact. We had a situation just recently where a flagman was assaulted, just doing his job, right, because of the sense of urgency or something that someone feels that they have that overrides other people's needs, and it is unacceptable, right? And we've got to all step to the plate and say, no, this is not how we should be behaving.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to add that work zone element because it's so important. It's so tragic as well. We're losing people just doing their basic jobs.
Exactly. Even children just wanting to be on the street playing around and seeing those crashes where kids are getting killed just because they're riding the bike on the road.
Right.
The road is for everybody. We need to be mindful, and it can happen to any of us. So we briefly talk about individuals with disability, and that is so critical. When we talk about walking and biking and taking transit and rolling, because when I run for office, I knocked on over 8,000 doors when I run for office by myself. And this was the #1 issue. And something that I constantly heard from people of every single generation, I mean, I'm talking about young people to the senior community, is that each one of us have somebody, a family member, a friend who has a disability. Okay, my husband is a disabled veteran. So being mindful that when we're talking about improving our streets, we're also thinking about people who are, on a wheelchair, people who are blind. How can we make sure that they're able to use transit, that they're able to get out of their home and go to the street and buy their own groceries in a safely way? So what steps are you doing in the state to ensure that when we're talking about Vision Zero, we're talking about Vision Zero for people of all abilities, and that is reflected in all the improvements that you're doing on your state roads throughout the state? So how are you including those voices?
Sure. A few things on that. One of the things that I proactively did at Metro was work with the disability community, because their view of that system is different. And they have different experiences. And unless you can really understand those, you'll miss them, exactly. Right? Because either you're able-bodied or whatever the disability might be. So I think that's one of the keys is making sure that we, meaning whether it's the transit administration or highway or toll, whoever, that we engage with that community to see what is their experience. What is their experience to go down? So even if we have a sidewalk, that's great. But if you put a utility box next to the pole, that's not so good, right? Exactly. Or you put the utility pole next to the bus stop where the lift is going to be. There's just basic things that, we, as we're doing them in offices and doing them on, computer, CADs or whatever. But unless you're out there and really engaged to see what that is, so you have to incorporate that community into the planning and design of a lot of these services and facilities. And to address these things up front and not have to go back, try it later, spend more money to fix, which had been done right the first time.
And it's not that as easy as it may sound. Before I got on the county council, I was a vice chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board. So my background is on urbanism, and it's on development, redevelopment. And you won't believe how hard it is even to get developers coming in, because we want I'm pro growth completely. I'm not even gonna hide it. We need more density, especially by the metro system, by transit. We need more riders taking the metro. And that's really the environmentalist way when you concentrate densities near transit, so people rely less in cars. But just every time we had a particular application in the refusal of understanding that we must have sidewalks, that we must, like if you're coming in, having a sidewalk it is part of your responsibility as a developer working on a particular site, that the sidewalks need to be wide enough, okay, for a wheelchair, for a woman or a man, somebody with a stroller, pushing the baby. Those are critical. Having a bus stop, not just having the little sign that says that there is a bus stop here, but having a shelter there. In my district, we have a lot of folks who walk and bike. I have immigrants who live in my community. You know what we do? We take the bus. We walk to the bus shelters.
Sure.
So having that as part of the infrastructure, making sure people feel safe, even if it's just waiting on the bus, but having that shelter is critical when it rains, when it's really hot, and making sure that when we have the traffic lights, that they are positioned in a way that somebody on a wheelchair can reach. I mean, it's amazing how people say, they check the box and say, okay, it's fine to have this particular street light there, but they're not thinking of how to position it in a way that people of all abilities can reach. And that's something that I feel like I had to continue emphasizing because it needs to get from the top to the bottom for people who are actually working and installing these things to understand that it's not just placing them, it's ensuring that people can actually use them. Right. So that I wanted to put that there. And there's a question in the chat that involves the people with all abilities. It says, will all the plans that you're doing with the state, will they include paratransit networks throughout the state? Paratransit networks are basically networks that deal with people with all abilities. So when you're installing them, you think about this. So maybe if you want to add anything else on that.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's to my point is we have to expand, the communication, right, and the partnership. At the end of the day, that's really what's needed.
Yes, perfect. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Let's talk about modernizing MDOT, the Department of Transportation, planning section. So many of the Maryland Department of Transportation's tools, which you address some, in particular, the designation of context zones, are based on recent data and current on-the-ground conditions. They're not forward-looking and don't reflect local plans on the potential offered by transit stations in an area. Do other jurisdictions do it better than Maryland? What steps are you taking to bring MDOT to the next level, and how can we help you?
Right. We can do better. I have seen worse in other jurisdictions, to be frank. I've worked in some other, particularly in my consulting world, I've worked with a number of communities, and believe me, there are certain things that we do pretty good, but there's lots of improvement for sure. So I think, I purposely introduced the team because, again, that is sort of a change of philosophy, right? To really think not in the past, but think, into the future, and to challenge ourselves internally, is one of the first steps, I think, to do that. So it's conversations that I've had, obviously, with the different administrators. It's conversations where we're bringing, the focus of headquarters to them to make sure they understand where we're going. Right. And to make sure that we're promoting, recruiting, training people to do that, to understand, this is the way we're going to do it. The other part of that is I am working with, for instance, out-of-state planning, community housing development, economic development, commerce, again, because, we got to use all those tools to get to some of these issues. And I think we all have a shared responsibility to do that.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk about the MARC rail, which you mentioned. I know we made news on this. So increasing train service on the MARC rail is critical as part of the solution to decreasing traffic on I-270, for example. For this goal to be accomplished, we need to actively work with our federal delegation to achieve an agreement with CSX, because they own the tracks. what actions is the administration taking in this regard, making sure that we have more people living uptown, like think of Frederick County, Gettysburg, folks who actually work in downtown DC, for example, and who are using 270, but they would love to use the MARC rail. Right now, there's not enough service on the rail, and that's why it's not convenient. But how can we help you step it up and
Sure.
ensure that happens?
I do have a history here at 2 levels. If you may even dust off the MARC growth and investment plan that I did several years ago when I was at MTA, which again was trying to push us, much further into using that system. It's a challenge with CSX. I mean, we have to be very open about that. I mean, they have a different mission, right? But they are working very closely. The governor personally is engaged with CSX and Lieutenant Governor in obviously making sure their business needs are met, but also getting them to understand that we have these other priorities as well. And just historically, when I dealt with some of these issues, it was a very, very, very hard climb. Again, because of some of those competing pressures.
Right.
But I can tell you that just one example is the train that was offered for opening day for the Orioles on the Camden line from CSX. That was a big deal. I mean, that's just not something that just you can say, okay, call them up and say, please do. I mean, that is, again, a meeting of the minds a little bit about the opportunities. So clearly in the I-270 corridor, a tremendous opportunity there, given the pressures on I-270. And we can't forget what's happening on the Penn line, with the MARC system, which is, obviously with the tunnel, that large investment that Amtrak and the federal government's doing there is going to help that service, which clearly helps Prince George's County, the residents there get into district. And just as important in that line and the Camden line is the reverse commute to Baltimore. We tend to think of that service more to Washington, but the reality is Baltimore is another very large part of the future of this state. And we want to combine those 2 regions as best we can. And that system provides that as well.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And the connectivity between regions is key. I remember you mentioned that you live in Towson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to Goucher College, so I know Towson very, very well. So let me go back and see. There's another question that says, how is the emergence of self-driving vehicles affecting road safety for vulnerable road users? Are current laws and regulations sufficient to cover self-driving vehicles, or do we need to change them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that maybe you all saw the article, I think it was in yesterday's Washington Post on Tesla and, some of the issues, the issues they have. It's clearly, it's an emerging technology. It brings a lot of issues, both from a practical standpoint and almost from an ethical standpoint, right? That we're going to have to, again, as you mentioned, we have to think forward. So I think that is part of it. I think there's going to have to be, it's not, it's going to take, I mean, it's a national issue, if not even an international issue, right? That we've got to come to grips with. We're not, I'm not, I don't have all the answers there by any means, but I think we have to recognize that is a reality, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, that technology is going to play more and more in our world. It provides some tremendous benefits, but it also provides some challenges. I personally, in my vehicle, I don't turn on some of that stuff for fear, I am not comfortable with it yet. But at the end of the day, I think that, the technology is moving that direction. So we've got to say, all right, now, how does that then protect? I think that's the same sort of things we've been talking about, is that it's not about the car. It's about where it's served, what it's, its role in this larger, ecosystem that we're in. And so particularly for pedestrians, bicyclists, someone with a disability, how is it adjusting to those, someone that may behave in a different way than maybe this thing's been, programmed to deal with. So I think there's quite a bit of work there to do. But I also think that it's a reality that we have to address.
Exactly. Something also very, very important. It is, I'm very excited that the new chair of the Environmental and Transportation Committee in the Maryland House of Delegates is Delegate Mark Foreman,
Yeah.
somebody who truly cares about and understands transportation infrastructure. So I'm sure that he'll be one of those folks who are looking in our General Assembly, looking into how this is going to affect our state, the self-driving vehicles, and what kind of laws we need to pass to ensure that we're all safe. So we need to
Now,
follow.
we're very fortunate to have Delegate Corman because, I mean, he's extremely bright, as you know, very passionate about these issues, and just brings so much to the table. So we're very fortunate there.
Yes. And speaking on politicians, another person that I really enjoy working with is my Montgomery County Council President, Evan Glass. He recently introduced legislation at the County Council, which I'm a co-sponsor, is the Montgomery County Safety Streets Act. So basically, the legislation will eliminate right turn on red and slip lanes on county-owned streets in town centers and in urbanized areas. But the problem is that, you know, it only affects county roads, right? But I think about places, especially in my district, like, you know, Northwood High School or Blair High School. Those are schools that are actually on state-owned roads. University Boulevard, Georgia Avenue, Connecticut Avenue. Do you think there's a chance for the state to do something similar, especially in places that are urbanized across the state? Because I mean, it's awesome that we're pushing this at the countywide, but if it doesn't affect the state roads, especially when we have key places like schools on the state roads, is I don't want to say meaningless, but it's a challenge. So any way that you think the state can jump on board and do something similar?
No, I mean, as you know, I mentioned in my comments, that is one of the things I've directed the team to do, is not just look at the physical part of what we do, but the regulations and the policies that we you know, apply. And that would be, you know, would fall in that, you know, in that category to me. It's like there are a number of things that we've done that are either you know, based on, you know, 20, 30, 40 years of engineering philosophy, you know, historical philosophy, that did not focus on the thing beyond the car, right? Beyond the driver. And that's why I've asked them, and basically directed them to look, no, take a hard look at these things, see what makes sense. And then also, again, as we've hit on several times, is to think forward about some of these issues, right? How do we think about, you know, how do we get ahead of these issues rather than always being in a reactionary mode on some of these issues?
Exactly, especially when I was on the planning board, we developed a tool with the Montgomery County Planning Department that predicts places where, you know, crashes are most likely to happen just because of how the road is designed. If you have a place where a crash already occurred, and then we have another area that is very similar in terms of how the road is designed, then you know that's going to be a problem in the future. So how can we be proactive in making those changes ASAP before somebody gets killed? Because literally that's what's going to happen. I have a question here in the chat. It says, will your administration commit to reforming the SHA permitting process? Currently, local jurisdictions who have funding to make bike and pedestrian safety improvements on state roads have to go through a long permitting process with SHA that frequently results in months, maybe years, many times, of delays to safety and Vision Zero projects. This broken process is one of the most critical needed reforms.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the same answer I just gave, and that's why I've directed this sort of review. But I think we have to make sure that we do a review of that, because I also, you know, I get approached quite a bit by people, for instance, businesses that want different types of access to state roads, which actually can create other issues, right? Particularly safety related issues. And the permitting process is painful from that direction too. I'm sure you've experienced some of this. So there's always a balance, you know, with some of this. But so I think the permitting process is needed, but how do we do it? How do we streamline it? What are some of the goals we're trying to achieve? And it's not necessarily one size fits all, right? We have different types of facilities. And so what makes the most sense? And if we've slipped to the point where it becomes so bureaucratic that we've lost sight of that, then that's not a good thing if things are taking years. But I know just in another part of the state right now, there's some pressure to offer different access, which, it's, from a safety perspective, just does not, make sense. And, so that's it. It's always that push and pull, but we can definitely do better for sure.
Yes, thank you for that answer. I'm gonna bring it back to engagement. And I'm gonna give you an example of something that happened not too long ago with the previous administration, okay? So, because I think if you don't know the story, you need to know the story.
Okay.
Again in Wheaton, sorry, bringing it back, but that's my district. So we had a pilot. It was a bike. It was a pilot on University Boulevard, which is owned by the state. And basically the state came in and created this protected bike lane. I was on the planning board when this happened. And let me tell you, I did not know that this project was happening until I saw the press release from SHA. Now, again, I'm a cyclist. I'm the one who I have a white bicycle. So people recognize me every time they see my bike around, people know. And in parts of me, I was actually very excited when I saw the pilot coming into my district. It was actually the first pilot for a protected bike on a state road in the entire state. So it was a big deal, okay? Now, the downside of that is the lack of communication. The intentions were great, but if we don't actively introduce to a community that you have this great idea coming in and you would like to test it in your neighborhood, it creates a huge issue. So to the point that the neighborhoods around, they were very vocal neighbors in my district who immediately opposed the idea once they saw the bike lane, because we didn't have that engagement. We didn't have that education component. We just went in and took over, and it created this really bad taste in the whole situation that made me really, really sad, because I do want the protected bike lane on the road. It was actually done in a way that it created, some traffic on one of the key roads that lead to that connects to the state road, like in this case was Arcola. And when I was canvassing, it was right before my election. So that was the number one issue, was hearing in that particular community how much they hated the protected bike lane. And I'm like, no, don't hate it. So now it's gone. It was just a pilot,
Right.
and it's just so important. I just really need to make sure that you get this. I think you do, but you have to hear from me.
No, I appreciate
Before
that.
we have these great ideas, you gotta talk to, first of all, talk to our local jurisdictions, and then, let's have, community meetings with the neighborhoods, seeing what, areas maybe where we shouldn't start in that particular segment, where we should start in another one. That's something that it should be done together. And so that happened, and any reactions that you have or things that you can commit on doing to ensure that, as you said before, it takes a village. It takes all of us to understand that yes, it's about redesigning the road, but also creating this civic responsibility of being safe and being mindful of our own actions, but also working together to ensure that every voice is heard. And that way we cannot push for this amazing, we need to evolve, basically. We're doing things that we're trying to push on things that are already happening in other places, in other nations, okay? We're actually behind. And I say that as an immigrant. I'm the only immigrant on the county council. And sometimes I have to tell my colleagues, we're not the best on many things as a nation. You need to really open your minds and see what's happening in Europe, in South America, where I was born.
Right.
But it does take conversations and communication and engaging people. So
Yeah. Just one comment. I mean, it's been a focus of the governor's, is that what he, it's tough enough, right? Everything that we do in government, right? I mean, it's a tough, there's never enough to go around. There's, always different points of view. But what he has stressed is let's not do any unforced errors. And to me, that's an example of an unforced error. I mean, you can't just pop things out on people. You have to engage. And you may end up in a different place. That's not the point. The point is, if you don't engage, you don't know. And then when you spring something on someone, it's an unforced error. And it's just a very simple thing that could have been done in that case. Who knows where that would have led, right? But because it wasn't done, it led to, in effect, that situation. And in terms of thinking beyond, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. There's particularly in the transit arena, as you know, the United States is, woefully behind, other parts of the world. It just is, and there's no hiding that. There's lots of reasons for that. I mean, everything from how we've, the land use decisions we've made, the fueling decisions, that all that stuff, has led to that. But what you see in other countries is they're just in different places, particularly when you think of bicycle pedestrian prioritization, right? In a lot of other parts of the world, that is a given. It's not, I mean, it's not something that people have to talk about. It's just there. And that's, and again, that's a little bit of the change of the culture here, both as, as the bureaucrats and the practitioners and the operators, but also the community, right? Because, I'm sure you feel some of that tension like you felt on this is, so we got to do a better job of educating and looking at the bigger picture. So I agree with you.
Exactly. There is another question on the chat, and I know we have like around 5 minutes.
I apologize. I do have to leave pretty shortly. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you this question, and then any last remarks and things that you would like to share, that would be great. So I have one from Carolyn Wilson. It says, I may have missed this. Have you identified the 5 high priority corridors that DOT has selected for transformation?
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, what's your criteria?
Yeah, I've asked them to do that. Give me 5 that we're going to then, zero in on and again, a little bit more of a pilot, but really move in that direction. So that'll be coming up shortly.
And is there a criteria already established for?
They're working through that right now. They're trying to, understand that. The first was, I think we started at 23, if I recall. It's trying to, all right, now let's zero in on a few. Let's make a difference. Let's see what we learn from that and then apply it to other ones.
I see. Okay, so if there is a community forum or a survey or anything that you're sending out, please let us know, because we would love to tell you to give your input. Secretary Wiedefeld, because I'm mindful of your time, we have 5 minutes, but any last thoughts, things that you really want to emphasize, things that we as a community of, who really care about making sure streets are safe to walk, bike, roll, take transit and drive, can do to help you push, and also to help you get more funding from the federal government to send to us. Again, funding is is key. We're just ready to take action for you. So.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. But yeah, I mean, I think we have to stay engaged, and you need to put pressure on us. We need to put pressure on other entities, right? And I think that's how we got to keep going at this. It's long overdue in many cases. I think there's a lot of just misinformation and just not understanding, some of these issues that maybe we got to educate people a little bit more, like you said, with the example that you gave. And some of that's got to be done early. But we've got to, I think we have to basically be much more engaged. I know we as an agency, meaning the department and our different agencies, we have to be leaders in this, not followers. So again, we're gonna be doing that, and then we're gonna need support as we go through different budget hearings and as we go after federal dollars. You name it, we're gonna need that, and we're gonna have to work with all aspects of the community, particularly the business community. I really feel strongly, and when I look at the walk we took the other day, a lot of those businesses are dependent upon some of the things that we may want to touch. So we've got to make sure that they're at the table, that we meet their needs as well. It's at a larger scale. The CSX is the same issue, right? We have certain goals, but we also have to recognize they have certain goals. And so how do we work with them to get to the same place? So anyway, thank you so much for your time. I apologize. I do have to run down to Annapolis, but it sounds like you had a great day or having a great day on these issues. So I appreciate your time and all your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you both so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye. Elizabeth, do you want me to hang around? Or Peter, do you want to join the conversation before we shut it down? You're muted.
Sorry. One question that we might have posed to the secretary, but I'll pose it to you, Natalie, and we're going to have further conversations about this. But one thing that's a very big Vision Zero issue on a lot of state roads, but in particular on Colesville Road, where the bus rapid transit has begun to operate, and there's a plan that the county and the state have agreed upon to put, for stretches of that, put that facility into the median so that it has a dedicated lane.
Right.
And yet, what efforts can the council make to make sure that MCDOT and SHA will at the same time look at how are people walking and biking along US 29?
Yes, I'm 100% with you and putting pressure not just on the state, but at the local level, as you're mentioning. And even the efforts that I'm doing on my district, like on Georgia, University, anything that we accomplish here will impact the rest of the county. But ensuring the staff, DOT staff, county DOT staff understands that we must do that switch. It wasn't, and telling you as a planner, as somebody who was on the planning board and hearing presentations from DOT, where the success was how fast can we move cars in a particular intersection, instead of thinking, how can we move people safely? Okay, people of all ability. That takes, there are folks on staff who just don't get it. So it is our job as elected officials to push and make that switch and keep reminding and being vigilant with actions. I have an issue. You're bringing out 29, which I'm with you 100%, and I will promise you, I will follow up with DOT to ensure that that's taken care of, but not just me, also working with the council member who's the district council member for that area, to understand that that we're all here together, working together to push for the same thing. Safety is about saving lives. Really, that's what it really is. Pushing that, but also even in my own district. We have and it's been on the news, we have a situation where there's a particular community in Rockville, part of my district, that wants to have sidewalks. It has been already approved by DOT. It was on Moco 360, the local newspaper, and it's still taking a while for the county to start building that particular sidewalk for kids to walk to school. So it's the bureaucracy for somebody like me, who's a newly elected official, is not easy. But I am committed to keep pushing and making sure that our Vision Zero goals are not just stuck in a desk, that they're actually being implemented. So I know, long answer.
I was just coming back on screen to chime in the meeting that you hosted with the governor and Secretary of Transportation a couple of weeks ago that I was privileged enough to be at. But then I biked home, and my goodness, the way there was fine, but the way out, it was like, turn left on Connecticut Avenue, the Google things. And I was like, really? Are you sure, Google?
It's
It-
bad.
There were a lot, and yes, those, so I was so glad that you are working on that
Well, thank you for being
intersection.
Thank you for being there. It was, we got so many people there, and you know what? I love that we had so many businesses there. Again, touching on what the governor, what the secretary Wiedefeld said, in making sure that in our advocacy we include the business voice. And when I was on a planning board, I constantly heard. I'm one of those folks who people have the background. I don't believe in parking minimums. I honestly think that if you want safety in your communities, and you have a business or a building near transit, especially metro, you need to have less parking, period. But it's that education, making sure people understand that it's about getting people there, not the cars there. And maybe
I
we should
really
maybe-
appreciated, no, go ahead. Maybe
no,
we should.
maybe Wawa can have a meeting just with the business community to dig into this and invite.
Because I love the way you said walking and biking is for businesses. That is not always really clear to elected officials. And so I agree wholeheartedly. And I think you're right. That's who shops. People who are walking, people who are biking. And then, yeah.
I don't bike just for recreation. I bike because of also necessity, and I am teaching my kids to do that too. But it's not safe for them to do that in Wheaton. It's not. So
Is there anything, Natalie, that you took away from the visit by Governor Moore to Georgia Avenue about how we can make Georgia Avenue a safer road? Stuff that you can share with people today?
I can share that I'm working with DOT. We're sending a follow-up letter to the governor this week with concrete steps saying, thank you so much for coming. This is what we need. So I'm dividing the letter into steps. What kind of things can we achieve within the next 2 years? So those are short-term goals. You may think 2 years, that's too long. No, I mean, honestly, when we talk about transportation infrastructure, two years is a short-term goal. So within 2 years, and then what's the long vision, which I share with him, and we gave him a pamphlet of things that we want. Like, I would love to have, Georgia Avenue must be a boulevard, okay? Must become a boulevard where we can have BRT, when we can bike and do all that great stuff. So that's the long term. So that once we finish the letter, I'll share that with you. I know I'm blessed that I have an amazing state delegation. In this area is District 18, but I also have District 20 and District 19. And we have people who truly get what we're saying here at the local level, and they're also pushing on that side. So having, the elected officials do that, but also you in the business, and I'm like all those businesses that are in Georgia Avenue, I'm getting them involved to say that this is great for business. We want this. And we can connect that with that business round table that you're going to be doing to talk about this, and connecting the dots,
And actually, in a comment, Jeremiah Lowry, our advocacy director, is working on a project to engage business and faith leaders. So it's already happening.
Nice. Love it. Okay, that's great. The faith leaders, we need to connect them too. I didn't think about that, but you're
That's
right.
what he is. He is very, very visionary. Yes, he knows.
Yeah, all those big faith within, I don't want to say church, faith institutions on state roads, getting them engaged. I mean, have you seen the parking issues on Sundays and Saturday? Peter, you mentioned Route 29. That's highway of heaven for me. You know how many faith institutions we have like within half a mile? It's like 50 in just a little portion. And then when you drive on Saturdays and Sundays, you see all that wave of parking. Can you imagine if we can make it easier for people to take transit? We wouldn't have that issue.
Right. And like on 29, there's a synagogue on Lockwood and all sorts of people who won't use a car on Saturdays, walking to the synagogue, and the conditions are just atrocious.
Terrible.
And so we I know that we need to improve that, and that's true in the Kemp Mill neighborhood,
Oh, yeah.
in Spades, and there's just so many different ways that we can engage. And I think engaging with the business community will be a great idea. One sort of smaller issue that I know that you're savvy to is the lack of bike parking in front of businesses, and how we can encourage the property owners to let the people who are operating the businesses get that bike parking put in.
That,
Yeah.
and especially because they're free. Like we had at least in Montgomery County, we install them for free. I push, the bike parking that you see at Wheaton Mall, the one by LA Fitness, I advocated for that one. It took me like 6 months to convince the mall to let me do that, because I used the gym. So I wanted to bike to the gym, and it was ridiculous. So maybe that business roundtable, business town hall, whatever you want to call it, will bring that up. And that will be part of the goals, making sure that more businesses include bike riding. Right now, like when I went to Regina, I used my bike for the governor's safety walk. I had to leave my bike on a parking meter. That's what
Yes, I
usually
just
do.
locked up to a sign out front. There was just a sign and I was like,
It's
okay,
terrible.
I'll lock up, right?
Yes,
And also racks for scooters, so anyway.
There's a question here in the Q&A, and I don't know if you have any responses. How can MDOT update roadway service standards to better implement context-driven design improvements? 355 is mentioned, but Georgia is just as applicable. I guess I'm wondering from your perspective as a planner, do you feel the state is actually applying these contexts in the right way?
The answer, I'm gonna be fair for Governor Moore, because the man just got elected and he has a new team. And I was really excited when he picked Wiedefeld to be the Secretary of Transportation. That to me, because the man that we just had today, Wiedefeld, I think he gets it. I am going to test that question, or ask me that question after I'm done with Georgia Avenue, after we send that letter and see how they react. I'm a strong believer on road diets on the state roads and county roads. Let's see how they actually respond on the question I asking about, we had this county legislation by Council President Evan Glass. Can the state do the same thing, especially in places where you have high schools on a state road? So I think we're gonna have to test if they walk the talk and see. So ask me that question in 2 years.
Okay. Natali, do you want to make any sort of last comment? I want to just extend Waba's thanks to you for participating in this, and I know when that suggestion came up that it was a really good one for you to be the person asking Secretary Wiedefeld the questions. And
I was going to say, I have a last comment, which is like, thank you so much, Natali. You've done an excellent job, not only today, but on the Wheaton event. It's been wonderful. So, and now your last comment, sorry.
Oh, my last comment is to say thank you to you for inviting me, for thinking of me. I know I talk too much. I hope I didn't talk too much. And I truly enjoy this, and I look forward to the continued partnership to make sure our streets are safe to walk, bike, roll, take truck seat, and drive. Period.